The silent house. What drives a man to harm his entire family with his own hands and then sleep in the same house? Edward didn't scream, didn't flee, didn't cry. He just cleaned up and closed the door. The press called him a monster. His neighbors called him a friend, and his wife could no longer call him anything. For years, he hid the motive behind a perfect smile. But before his end, he wrote one last letter. A sentence that left everyone frozen. This isn't just a crime, it's a psychological puzzle. And we're just beginning to understand it. Press play. But don't say we didn't warn you. The silence of the Zakarzewski house. On a street like any other, with houses in a straight line, freshly cut lawns, and flags waving in the wind, lived a perfect family. Or at least, that's what everyone thought. His name was Edward Zakarzewski, father, husband, model citizen, and inside, he kept something no one imagined. A secret that would make even the toughest FBI agents unable to sleep peacefully. The facade. Edward was, at first glance, an ordinary man. School teacher, loving father, married to Kathy, dedicated mother, active in the community. They had 2 children, Eddie Jr. and Ashley, ages 7 and 5. In photos, they smile, like any American family. Beach vacations, birthdays with balloons and cakes, Christmas with lights hanging at the entrance. But images lie, and in this story, nothing is what it seems. Edward's mind. Beneath that calm image lived a man who couldn't stand chaos. A man obsessed with control, with obedience, with perfection. When things didn't go as he wanted, he didn't yell, didn't slam the table, didn't break dishes. No. Edward would go quiet, smile, and store it all, like someone storing knives in a drawer. The wife who no longer stays silent, Kathy, began to notice that something in Edward had broken. He no longer spoke like before, no longer played with the children. He just observed, calculated. She began writing letters to her family. She told them something wasn't right, that she felt afraid. But no one took it seriously. Who could imagine that the neighborhood teacher, the man who helped at church, was hiding something like this? Absolute control. For Edward, the family was his project, his creation, and it had to function like a Swiss watch. His children couldn't speak without permission. His wife couldn't contradict him. Dinner had to be served at the exact time. Any deviation was a personal betrayal. And when Kathy started talking about separation, the clock stopped. The day everything changed. June 9th, 1994. The neighbors noticed that the Zakarzewski house was silent. Too silent. No laughter, no doors opening, no movement, and within a few hours, that silence began to smell. The call. That afternoon, an anonymous call reported that something was wrong at the house. Police arrived, knocked on the door. No one answered. They entered. And what they found is something that even the most experienced officers couldn't forget. The scene. In the main bedroom, Kathy, attacked, no longer breathing, harmed with brutality. In the small rooms, Eddie Jr., Ashley, their bodies, lifeless. The scene was meticulous, clinical, cold, as if it had been planned step by step. The missing man. Edward was no longer there. He had left, without a trace. Police found a note, an attempt to justify the unjustifiable, senseless phrases, delirium, denial, and beneath it all, a terrifying truth. He believed he was right. The hunt. For weeks, police, FBI, and Interpol searched for him. They knew he was intelligent, methodical, silent. He wouldn't use cards, wouldn't call anyone, wouldn't make mistakes, or so he believed. The fracture. Edward hadn't disappeared completely. He had crossed 3 states, was hiding in cheap motels, changed names. But what he couldn't change was his mind. He was haunted by faces, voices, memories, and in his silence, he began to break. The fatal error. In New Mexico, he made a mistake, spoke too much, said his real name, believed no one would recognize him. But someone did. An employee reported him. Hours later, he was captured. The monster behind the man. They brought him back, without emotion, without regret, without tears. During interrogations, he spoke little, but enough. He said he did it because he had to, because his family was destroying him, because he wanted to end the suffering. The silence returns. The house remained empty, marked, silent. But it was no longer just any silence. It was the echo of something irretrievable, a broken piece, a vanished family. And Edward awaited his trial. Cliffhanger. But the most disturbing thing wasn't what he did, but how he did it, how he planned each step, how he managed so no one suspected anything. And the most terrifying of all is that he would do it again, if he could. The secret that bleeds. A man who harms his wife could be called a monster. A man who harms his wife and children doesn't even deserve that name. Edward Zakrzewski waited in his cell, calm, serene, as if the horror he unleashed was nothing more than a stain that could be cleaned. But in what he left behind, on the walls of his house, there was something that couldn't be hidden. A truth, a story that no one wants to tell out loud. The interrogations. Detectives knew they weren't facing an impulsive criminal. Edward wasn't emotional, didn't act in rage, didn't yell, didn't despair. He planned, executed, and cleaned. During interviews, his answers were cold, clear, distant. The mind of the perpetrator. Psychiatric experts analyzed him for months. His profile was chilling. He didn't suffer from psychosis, didn't hear voices, had no hallucinations. He simply decided to cause harm. His motivation, absolute control. According to the clinical report, Zakrzewski developed an internal narrative where the act of violence was perceived as a logical adjustment to the loss of family order. A man who couldn't stand others' freedom, not even that of his own children. The trial. The trial began in April 1996. The evidence was devastating. The photos, unbearable. The community, horrified. On the stand, Kathy's sister testified. Kathy's sister, narrated voice. She told me she was afraid of him, that if something happened to her, we should look at him. We didn't listen. We never thought that. Pause. Silence. Jurors wept. Journalists became ill after sessions. The prosecutor asked for the ultimate penalty. The defense tried to claim mental illness. But Edward never showed pain. Not one tear, not one apology. The verdict. May 3, 1996. Edward Zakrzewski was found guilty of 3 counts of first-degree harm, premeditation, aggravated cruelty, complete absence of remorse. Sentence, the ultimate penalty, hidden testimonies. Over time, never-before-heard testimonies came to light. A former student said. Former student, reconstructed voice. He always scared me. He had that look, like he was measuring how people worked inside. A neighbor declared privately, Neighbor, I heard screaming that night. I thought it was the television. How do you forgive yourself for that? The last letter. Months before his end, Edward wrote a letter. In it he said, I have no regrets. I was the one who brought order at last. Everyone was playing at family and except me. I took it seriously. He closed with a phrase, silence is peace. The end. October 20th, 2024, Edward Zakrzewski met his end at Florida State Prison. He didn't ask for last words, didn't look at anyone, just closed his eyes and waited. The questions that remain. Why does someone who had everything decide to destroy it? Is evil something chosen or something that simply awakens? And what if there are more Edwards out there, smiling, walking among us, waiting for the next betrayal to justify another ending? Final scene, the house. The house still stands. No one has bought it. No one wants it. They say that at night. Footsteps can still be heard, doors that open by themselves, and a voice that repeats over and over. Silence, silence, silence.